everybody.
Good afternoon.
On behalf of Tau Phi Sigma Fraternity, I'd like to thank you all for coming here today. I hope you're all doing well. Additionally, I want to thank Yvonne, she's right here, for allowing us to use, the Latino Culture Center for this event today. Today, we're pleased to have the only Latino congressman from the Midwest and the national leader for Latino issues with us today. Luis Gutierrez has become more than our congressman here in Illinois in the 4th District. He's a congressman for Latinos all across America. From debating anti-immigrant leaders on shows like Meet the Press, to being the original sponsor of comprehensive immigration reform. Luis Gutierrez is America's leading spokesperson for immigrants' rights. Congressman Gutierrez has traveled to Arizona to stand against 1070 and led the fight to have Arizona's anti-immigrant laws stopped. He has led a national unity tour that focuses on families that are being torn apart by our nation's unfair immigration laws. He's not afraid to stand up to the president and say that immigration reform is much more than just adding Border Patrol agents. It is stopping unfair deportations.
Yeah, that's right.
Today's event is titled Expanding Horizons. We hope that today you become more aware that immigration reform is not only a Latino issue, but an issue of all cultures and ethnicities. We're proud to have our congressman here today with us because from coast to coast, he stands up for fairness and empowerment. He's a leader we can count on. He's an example we can follow. And we appreciate his presence with us today. Our Congressman, Luis Gutierrez.
At the University of Illinois here at the Chicago campus. And I want to especially thank my new fraternity brothers, for having invited me here this afternoon. When they first invited me here, it was probably going to be a somewhat different kind of gathering here this afternoon. We were going to talk Hispanic Heritage Month, and as many fraternities, I get invited across the country to come and speak to young people. And there's nothing I enjoy more or relish more than the opportunity to do that. So what is the new horizons that we have as a community? We have a community that is growing in population, but not necessarily growing in power and influence that equate that growing population. We have 1070 in Arizona. We have those that wish to change the Constitution of the United States to eliminate the 14th Amendment. We have all kinds of anti-immigrant, anti-Latino laws passed across this country, whether in the Congress or in state or localities. And that is something that we confront as our civil rights movement of today. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about how I come to this struggle and how I come to this fight. My mom and dad came here in 1953 to Chicago. Now, they didn't come as immigrants because they came as citizens of the United States. My mom came with her 6th grade education and my dad with his 9th grade education. She worked in a factory, he drove a cab. They worked hard, and they helped me become what I am today. But you know what? They came here to a city that was hostile in many, many aspects to them. Not knowing the language and not knowing how cold many times the Chicago winters could be. I remember growing up in apartments that many times didn't have heat. And many times, but the landlord was always there ready to collect the rent. And I remember a Chicago my parents always dreamed of returning one day to Puerto Rico. Eso es todo lo que hablaba. ¿Cuándo vamos a regresar? Vamos a ahorrar el dinero para que podamos regresar a nuestra patria. And you know, when I was 15 years old, that's exactly what they did. They packed their bags, they bought a brand new Chevy, some French provincial furniture, put some plastic on it, and moved back to Puerto Rico. And you know, I lived in that classic Latino household, right? That we all have come to understand. My parents only spoke Spanish, and I only spoke English. So they'd say, Luisito, a la tienda a comprar leche. And I'd say, can I have a nickel for a Coca-Cola? So we had that. You know, the interesting thing is, I understood everything they said, they understood everything I said, and we communicated excellently. And then they took me back to this little town of San Sebastián del Pepino, in the mountains of Puerto Rico, and I was 15 years old. Y ustedes saben lo que es ser adolescente, ¿verdad? In English it's a little harder, right? Adolescent. But en español se entiende la palabra. Adolescencia viene de dos palabras, dolor y ciencia. La ciencia del dolor. Well, we all understand that that's what adolescence really means. It is the science of pain. And here I was, taken out of my comfort, where I had friends and school, and I understood the idiosyncrasies and the language and the culture. And they took me to this little town, and I went to go to school, and the teacher said, ¿Y cómo tú te llamas? And I thought to myself, well, which one of them should I mean, in first grade I had a name, and third, and every year my name, it was Gutierrez, you know, I mean, every year it seemed to change. So I kind of said, Louis Gutierrez. Everybody started laughing. But that was my name. And I remember as he sent me home, because he said, ¿Y tú no tienes madre? And don't you have a mother? So I didn't understand that your full name in a Latin American country is your father and your mother's maiden name. And I looked at him confused, kind of saying, why is he talking about my mother? That's something very, very serious. Anyways, he sent me home. I asked my mom, mira que dice que si yo no tengo madre. My mother explained it to me. And she said my name was Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo. I thought to myself, that's a pretty nice name. Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo. And the more I said it, because in adolescencia, one of your favorite friends is the mirror. For all of you who remember being adolescent. And I said, Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo, and I was so happy. Because it was this wonderful new name that I had finally discovered. I went to school the next day. I went to a young girl in the corner, and I walked up to her and I said, Hola, mi nombre es Luis Vicente Gutierrez Olmedo. And she raised her hand and she said, Mister, that's what they call teachers in Puerto Rico, el gringo americano me está molestando. And you know, everyone in the classroom laughed, just as you have. And I never felt more alone and more isolated ever in my life than that particular moment. I never felt more hurt. And I tell you, there are people who were just like me at that particular point. We said our names funny, we dressed funny, we looked strange, and we were foreigners. And there are many people that come to America who too are ridiculed and laughed and set aside. And more importantly, our government divides their families, something that they never did to me. And so there were people who saw in me something greater and something more important than that strange kid from Chicago. They saw somebody in which they wished to invest their friendship and wished to extend a helping hand. Y tú sabes que nosotros como latinos, este es nuestro momento de extenderle la mano a aquellos que necesitan nuestra ayuda. It is our moment to extend that hand. Now, you know, on immigration reform, people say, well, it's not just a Latino issue. And people say it's ugly out there, Luis, And I say to you, if it were 1850s, 1860s, and we were in Boston, they would be talking about those hungry, ignorant criminals who come here to undermine our society with their Catholicism and their Pope and their priests. And they would be referring to the Irish. And if it were the turn of the century, we could pick up the New York Times and read an editorial that would say, only by the rule of law could we help to contain these people. And they'd be referring to Italian immigrants. They were wrong about the Irish, they were wrong about Italians, and they're wrong about the immigrants here today in this country. We all come. So as we celebrate our heritage, our contributions to this country, we must say to ourselves, what is our present responsibility? What is the responsibility that we have today? And I suggest to you that we have a responsibility to extend a hand to those that are suffering because of the cause of government and because of what government does to them. A lot of people are frustrated. They say, well, we marched. We went and we voted unprecedented numbers in the last. And the president said to us, if you elect me in the first year of my administration, I will bring and enact comprehensive immigration reform. And it didn't happen. Well, let me suggest to you, the reason women have the right to vote in this country, because there were those women who refused to take no as an answer. The reason that African Americans can sit where they wish on the bus and go to the schools and live where they wish, because there were those who said no. And we too have a responsibility to say no to those who would deny our brothers and sisters, those who have come here to sweat and toil and make this country better. Think about it a moment. There are students at this university, bright, intelligent, worthy human beings, who are going to graduate from this university but will not be able to take that diploma and that knowledge out because the Congress of the United States holds them responsible for the actions of their parents. Let's let the dream students free to live in our society. There are families here today that are being ripped apart. I am tired of seeing soldiers go off to Iraq and Afghanistan only to have orders of deportation against their wives here in the United States. That's wrong. Government should never divide and destroy. Should never divide and destroy. Think about it with your wife. The fear that exists in our immigrant community is intolerable. And only we in this room can make it better. You know, a lot of people say, man, Luis, pero estoy cansado. La verdad que estoy frustrado. La verdad que me faltan ganas. That's not an option. It's not an option. It's not an alternative. The only option and alternative you have, the only responsibility you have, is to carry it out to the ultimate sacrifice. And so, I'm going to suggest to everybody in this room, we're going to go back in the lame duck session, and we're going to try to get comprehensive immigration reform. And that is why I traveled to Tampa, and I traveled to Cleveland, and I traveled to San Jose, and I traveled across this country, making sure the Democratic candidates who believe in comprehensive immigration reform go back to that Congress. The Democratic senators go back to that Congress to make sure we can get it done. But just as importantly, I want to make sure that you understand that if the Congress refuses to act, that if the President refuses to act, and we cannot bring about comprehensive immigration reform, then we will demand in every corner, in every neighborhood, in every barrio, in every city, every town, anywhere where we are, we will raise our voices and we will put our personal freedom at risk. We will put our personal freedom at risk. We will put our personal comfort at risk until the deportations are stopped. Because this nation needs to to understand there are 4 million American citizens. 4 million American citizens. And the basic goal and purpose of the federal government isn't to educate those 4 million American citizen children, isn't to give them better health care, isn't to give them better housing, it's to deport their parents. That is something intolerable and un-American, and we're going to end it one way or another. So understand, especially all of the young university students, all of us that are citizens, that have the protection of the Constitution of the United States. You want to know how black people got their rights in this country? Because there were some black people ready to risk their own personal freedom and their own personal comfort so that others can live. That's how women got rights in this country. That's how workers got rights. And that's how we're going to get it. My question to you, are you ready to put your own personal freedom at risk, your own personal comfort at risk, so that others can live freely in our society? That truly is our challenge today. Now, I want to tell you a little story. Hispanic Heritage Month. It's a time to tell us. A lot of people, they think, they say, Roberto Clemente. I'm going to admit, I remember when my dad took me out to Wrigley Field in the 60s. And the Pirates would come in to play the Cubs, and I'd root for Roberto Clemente. Because I see that black man, that Puerto Rican man who was just crossing those barriers, right? And everybody thinks of him and they think he's the MVP. He's the all-star. He had that wicked arm that nobody would attempt to take third base and try to go home. And everybody thought, qué estrella ese Roberto Clemente, ¿verdad? Qué ser humano dinámico, qué jugador de pelota. And a lot of us think about it. Let me tell you how I remember Roberto Clemente. Not so much how he lived his life on the field, but what he gave his life for. Roberto Clemente, when he saw tragedy in Nicaragua, and he saw a dictatorship of Somoza, what did he do? He went throughout Puerto Rico and he collected food. He went throughout Puerto Rico and he collected medicine. He went throughout Puerto Rico and he collected food. And he put it on an airplane. And he didn't have a press conference. He didn't send a check. He didn't just send it and hope it got to the right people. El pelotero número uno del momento, the #1 MVP, got on that airplane and said, I'm going to guarantee that others do well and that this medicine, this clothing, this food gets to the people that are necessary. And in doing so, he gave his life. So, look, I'm not going to be Roberto Clemente. I'd like to live my life like Roberto Clemente. It isn't the honors that you receive on the field. I want to be remembered for what I did in terms of improving the lives of people. I want to fulfill my responsibility, my obligation. And if I'm going to truly fulfill my responsibility and my obligation at this particular moment, then I have to say to myself, how do I best serve the city of Chicago? How do I best move forward at this time of crisis and of need? It is a difficult decision. It is not one that I come to easily. But before I came here, I called Gary Chico. I called Tom Dart. Yes, and I called Rahm Emanuel. I called Meeks and I called Carol Mosley Braun and I called my friend Miguel Del Valle. And I called the candidates and I let them know that I would not be a candidate for mayor of the city of Chicago because I have an obligation, I have a commitment, I have a passion, and I have a compromiso con hacer esta lucha verdadera. wish them all Godspeed and well. I have to tell you something. All of the young people in this room, you can be the greatest and the best doctor and have all the plaques in the world. You can be the best lawyer or the best engineer and have all of the plaques and accolades in the world. And everybody can recognize you. But in the end, your life is really about what you have contributed to others. Many times, it's about setting aside your own personal ambition because you have a vocation to something. I think you know what my vocation is.
Yeah.
My vocation is to making sure that in this country, 4 million American children have the protection of that Constitution and that their parents won't be taken away from them. If you traveled with me to the garlic fields of Salinas, California, or to Postville, Iowa, where there's women in meatpacking plants, or a sweatshop in New York, and to see those women and see how they are exploited, and then ask yourself, not only are they exploited during the day because of the conditions under they work in, because of the salaries that they are submitted to, but the exploitation because of the vulnerability that they are committed every day. I need to raise my voice for those women and the millions of others like them, so that one day in America, they can receive a card from the federal government that says, you're legally here. Now dial 911 and put those corrupt people in jail. I think we have a wonderful city. One that I was born in, one that I've always lived in, except for that time that my parents moved back to Puerto Rico. I love Chicago. I hope to one day let my bones rest in Chicago after I've finished with my life. I love this city so much that I want to make sure that I can come back to this city. I want to be able to have a position where I go across the country and challenge people each and every day. Challenge us. Because we're not going to win simply because of Chicago. We have to have a movement that stretches across this nation, from Los Angeles to Chicago to New York, from Florida to Texas to Washington State. And I'm committed to making that movement a movement that will bring about comprehensive immigration. The young men and women in this room, I'll tell you what, our real challenge is this. After November 2nd, after the elections are over and the midterms elections are over and the House is settled and the Senate is settled, after the President of the United States and the Congress sit down in that lame duck session, if we do not have comprehensive immigration reform as a bill signed by the President of the United States, will you join me in a movement across this country to force the President of the United States to sign a bill and give the Again, I love this city. I love it so much that I will only give it what's in my heart. I will only give it my true vocation, my true energy. And that is to bring back a bill signed by the President of the United States that will allow men and women, families, immigrants from Asia, from Korea, and the Philippines, from Poland and Ukraine and Ireland, from Guatemala and Mexico, from Africa and Haiti, all of those wonderful communities that make up the fabric of the city of Chicago, the guarantee that their families will be respected by the federal government. That is our challenge. That is our goal. That is our objective. That is my vocation. And that is where I will put my energy in the coming months. I thank you all so very, very much for having me here.